Coming up in This Week in Computer Hardware, how many cores do gamers really need? Will AMD's Ryzen deliver? Are smartwatches dead? The Gigafactory is growing. And hey, why own just one laser thermometer? All that more coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiCH.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 394, recorded December 22nd, 2016. Everybody needs a laser thermometer. Welcome to TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, TWiCH weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most informative, most engaging, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say most holiday festively something hardware news, conversation, discussion, help, and how-tos. I'm obviously at the end of the year contemplating the weird news hole we have found ourselves in right before the new year and the beginning of CES. Joining me, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ryan Shrout. How are you, sir?
Hello. The news hole would be nice if we weren't supposed to do a show every week.
Well, you know, fortunately, I have faith in our ability to talk. We should talk about, I mean, think about it. It's been a crazy year, right? You know, the rebellion over the iPhone 7, and I was laughing because, you know, it seemed like several minutes after the iPhone 7 shipped, the iPhone 8 rumors started floating hot and heavy. The death of the phone bug, you know, following the death of the, goodness, language is a difficult thing apparently. You know, alongside the death of AirPods. AirPods, death of the headphone jack, right? So the next thing to go apparently on the iPhone 8 is going to be the home button. That'll be sort of integrated into the screen. Mac Rumor's got a really great collection, like, you know, OLED display, faster processor, glass body, finally an edge-to-edge display, which is going to do interesting things, I think, to speaker performance. And it's been funny. My co-host on Tech Things, Shannon, huge fan. I always listen when I watch video on my phone with headphones, and she always listens with the speakers. So she gets really frustrated when there's a single speaker or the audio quality is weak. But camera and Touch ID are supposed to be integrated in the display, that edge-to-edge display, wireless charging, one OLED, two standard models, which indicates that the OLED version will be profoundly expensive.
Picture there looks incredibly fake.
Yes, it absolutely is. That's via Concept's iPhone, which I'm quite sure does not have anything that resembles an actual model. But, you know, I believe they do have some excellent quality time with Photoshop. Yeah. The thing that the rumors on this one are great. My personal favorite being the long-range wireless charging. You know, which hopefully will not like cook the cat.
A wish list any phone ever. Like, it doesn't really appear to be anything like iPhone specific, and it's pretty obvious that they're not going to implement this many blanket changes all at once.
No,
that would be very, very unlike them to do that. Lack of a home button, I don't know. We've seen that for a while in Android phones. Some Android phones get rid of fixed buttons, and some use software buttons only. So we kind of know what that's like. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because the way the button is now on the iPhone 7, where it is capacitive yet still a physical thing that you push on as opposed to an area of the screen, makes for some annoying problems. Like if you wear gloves in the winter, and even if you have like those touch capable gloves, sometimes they're not always 100% touch capable. If you go to push your thumb down on the home button and it doesn't recognize it as a capacitive touch, you don't push the home button, right? So that's you suddenly realize that it's not a normal button, and it's actually a little bit frustrating in that case. So getting rid of even the pretense of having a button, I guess, makes sense. I don't think it will drastically affect anything otherwise, right? They're not going to get rid of Touch ID. It's still going to be implemented in the same way. So yeah.
We wait with bated breath. In the meantime, man, I've gotten some interesting questions from frustrated long-term MacBook users who were disappointed with the specs on the MacBook Pro and contemplating going to Windows for the first time. In the midst of that, Apple has decided to extend the discounts on USB-C adapters and accessories until March 31st. That came out a couple days ago. Another Mac Rumor story. Dropping the prices from $6 to $20 until basically it was originally from till December 31st, and now it is going till March 31st, 2017. Their USB-C to USB adapter is $9 down from $19. The Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2 adapter, $20 off at $29. $20 off the USB-C to digital AV multi-port adapter. That's pricing it at $49. I mean, USB-C to Lightning cables, $19 for a 1 meter cable.
Why not just say you've discounted the price? Why does it have to be a temporary drop, right? Is it
shareholder management, Wall Street, and a flat, I'm going to say flat-assed instead of flat-out refusal to admit that they've really irked a lot of their customers?
It's clearly what that is. If you're offering a discount on these cables because people threw a fit of how you designed your device, then just make the cables cheaper. Like, I don't think anybody was mad when the Lightning to 3.5 millimeter jack adapter was only $9, right? Sure. I was like, okay, actually, it was $9. That's good. I'll buy 3 of them. I'll keep one in each bag and one at the office or whatever it is, and I don't ever have to worry about it, and I don't have to spend $60 on it, right? It just seems so odd that they want to manage or maintain this image that they're always right.
This is a company that's been averaging like 40% profit margins for years. I don't think they particularly think they've ever made a mistake. It's been. I mean, in the wake of the iPhone 7, right? There's like, Johnny Ive is checked out, and Tim Cook is a Ballmer, not a Jobs or a. It's been pretty crazy. June 30, the quarter of June 30th and September 30th, they're only running a 38% profit margin, which if you've ever run a business or paid attention to most companies, like 38% profit margins are staggering. It's epic. It's frustrating. I was hoping to want to upgrade the iPhone 7, and the headphone jack was not a thrilling concept to me. And then the headphone jack being followed up, the sort of iPhone 7 debut being followed up by the crazy dog piles of rumors around the iPhone 8. It's been a little frustrating. The MacBook Pro, I see a lot of expense for something less than the performance people expected, especially now that we've seen, right? You guys did a fantastic review on PC Per of those HP Spectre 360s, looking at the Skylake versus Kaby Lake performance in terms of battery life, and you were looking at something dangerously close to a 20% boost in performance with what was almost entirely just a processor shift. And the flip side of that is Kaby Lake is not looking as exciting on the desktop. Hard OCP, there's a lot of stuff in Kaby Lake if you are concerned about power consumption, if you're concerned about H.265 decoding on a home theater PC not sucking down 40% of your clock cycles, right? With the upgrades to the chip, you're looking at like 10% CPU utilization for H.265 or 4K decoding. The media extensions look interesting. Additional PCI Express ports look really, really interesting. But in terms of pure performance, we're not seeing anything particularly compelling. More importantly, AMD, right? Fantastic year with their GPUs. Really kind of came out swinging. We saw some reports a couple weeks ago that looked at 1060. NVIDIA GTX 1060, and the 480 several months after they were released, and it was amazing, right? The downside is like, well, AMD left a lot of performance on the table when they shipped the Radeon 480, but through some pretty serious work or maybe some pretty serious debugging or catching up on their drivers, found some pretty compelling gains, like large single digit, small double digit gains. Gains on a bunch of gaming applications, and that's good. But yeah, Kaby Lake desktops, looking a little frustrating. AMD GPUs looking a little bit better. The GTX, if you're looking to buy a GPU for somebody that does 1080p gaming, you don't want to spend all the money, get him a GTX 1050 Ti. That's a fantastic deal. And then Zen. Man, I think we're both kind of freaking out, waiting to see if, we should call it Ryzen. We'll probably know more about them after CES, but 8 core, 16 thread, 3.4 gigahertz. No idea on the pricing, although everybody's hoping it's going to be $1,000 or sub $1,000 just to put the heat on Intel. 20 megabytes L2 plus L3 cache. Benchmark leaks and AMD teasing us suggests that they are closing back in on Intel in a very serious way, especially in terms of performance. If you think that we realize that the Kaby Lake desktop CPUs are not getting that much faster.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting 2017, and honestly, I was hoping it was going to be an interesting 2016 with that processor release. You can take what you can get, I guess. From what we know now, the 3.4 gigahertz base clock. I remember it was 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. You and I were talking about on this show about the leaks of potential clock speeds and what that means for performance and all that type of stuff. 3.4 gigahertz as the base clock means that most of those rumors were kind of off, right? Most of those predictions of performance were off a little bit. Now, to be fair, the 8-core, 16-thread, 3.4 gigahertz, like that is going to be their top-end part. There will be parts that run at lower frequencies than that. There will be parts that have 6 cores and 4 cores probably when they actually come out. So we're talking about kind of whatever the flagship Ryzen CPU will be. And in terms of price point, it would be crazy for them to be at $1,000. It would, I'm thinking in the $500 to $600 range for their top-end part. And again, this is not knowing anything about performance or its power consumption or its scalability.
This is a highly nuanced guess.
Yes, correct.
An educated guess, as it were.
If you look at something like the core, what do they directly compare to? The 6900K and all of their testing. The 6900K is a what do they charge? $1,049 for it. AMD doesn't have the cachet to charge that much for a processor anymore. I don't care if it were 20% faster than the 6900K. They have a whole ecosystem that they kind of need to rebuild around their name brand and around enthusiasts. So they need to be aggressive, and I think AMD has proved that's their plan based on how they launched the RX 480. The Radeon RX 480 was very aggressively priced. With the mindset of let's gain market share, not necessarily do we need to worry about making all of the margin up front day one. Let's make that a long-term goal. So if they apply that here, then I would see this as a $500 to $600 processor and be really aggressive against it. Because to be fair, we also don't know the performance otherwise, right? Even if multi-threaded performance it matches, single-threaded performance might be lower, and we'll just have to see where AMD stands in that regard when we finally get our hands on them.
So, 6 cores, 8 cores, 10 cores, certainly valuable if you're rendering giant piles of video or just dealing with editing giant piles of video, or if you're running the server room of doom. Do gamers, at this point, how many games actually take advantage of quad-core processors?
You're seeing a lot of them that do that now. The interesting thing is it kind of tops out there. Not that there aren't a couple of games that will take advantage of more than 4 threads or 4 cores, right? And keep in mind that a lot of the quad core processors that Intel has out have hyperthreading, so they're actually 8 threads. I think you would find that the benefit to going above quad core for gaming is going to be really minimal. And so because of that, AMD is going to have to make a different case for the benefit of multi-threadedness, in the same way that Intel has been having to do it when they released their Broadwell E processors. All their enthusiast class, E-class CPUs have always had to make the argument of, well, there's this super user out there that is doing gaming plus encoding plus streaming at the same time, and this is something that requires more CPU horsepower. And to their credit, that is a use case. It's just how prevalent is it? So
there's you, there's me, there's several other people.
It would not surprise me if Intel, maybe even in an attempt to kind of subvert AMD, if Zen turns out to be this part that is very good at multi-threaded but not as good at single-threaded, where Intel goes back and starts talking about the benefits of single-threaded performance over all else. In a similar way to what Apple does compared to the Android market in terms of their performance metrics, right? In the mobile space, people still talk about the importance of single-threaded performance, and on the PC, it wouldn't surprise me if Intel kind of did that same thing, if that's where their advantage ends up lying.
So, quad core for gaming, is it time to sort of give up on trying to dodge gaming PC builds by going with dual cores? I would take a dual core at this point over a single core, even at like a $400 gaming PC. Is it time to just accept that we need quad cores for gaming, or is that kind of pushing it for most games at this point?
I still don't think it's a requirement, but it certainly makes the most sense for even modest PC gamers that plan on PC gaming for a couple of more years, right? It's going to be something, it's not a trend that's going to change. It's not something that's going to roll back, and suddenly we're going to see, games only use one thread. As more and more developers start to utilize DirectX 12 and Vulkan and those types of things, they're going to be spreading that work across multiple threads almost as a necessity, in addition to just being able to get extra performance. It will help in a lot of different ways as we get into future GPU generations as well. Yeah, at this point, can you build a budget PC on a dual core hyper-threaded Core i3 processor? Yes, or an Athlon or whatever. You can. To me, I wouldn't go below a Core i5 and or a quad core processor in any area at this point now. And I would probably hesitate to buy any AMD platform until you see what the Zen system truly is. But as we were talking about before, you've seen a lot of the Kaby Lake results out already. The impact that's going to have on quad core performance is close to zero for the desktop consumer. So, no particular reason to hold out and wait for new chipsets, new motherboards, new processors if you don't want to.
This is really kind of messing up my $400 gaming PC plans.
Yeah. Like I said, you can still do it, and it will still produce a good result. It's just, at some point you have to realize that you're planning for, more than the next month. You're planning for the next 6 months or 12 months at least.
Or if you want it to last the next couple of years without a CPU upgrade in the entirely too near future.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Crazy year for Nintendo. I saw a number that the Nintendo Classic sold 196,000. I'm trying to pull the story up because I closed the link by accident. But the Nintendo, the NEC Classic Edition, 196,000 units in the U.S. in November.
I didn't get one.
That's the guest from NPT Group. Shannon managed to grab one. Loved it. It would be nice to. It would be nice if there was ways to add additional games to it. But I'm always looking for a way to complain about it. Yeah, it's pretty cheap. Yeah, the most Googled video game console of the year, except for the Nintendo Switch.
I'm surprised the Switch is above that.
Well, I think people got frustrated when they couldn't buy the Nintendo Classic.
I did. Stopped looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I wonder if it's even up on. I wonder if it's even in. I'm sure it's not in stock anywhere.
It's
at
not.
This point.
I just looked on Amazon, and it's available from third-party sellers starting at $199.95.
Well, that's much more reasonable than the $350 it was selling for a few weeks ago, but significantly higher than the $59.99 MSRP. Well, let's talk about the Nintendo Switch, right? Scott wrote up a pretty good roundup of all the rumors going on with the Nintendo Switch. It seems complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting information kind of filtering about. It was listed on the Vulkan webpage that it was Vulkan compliant, OpenGL, OpenCL compliance, all that type of stuff, which kind of makes sense because of what we know of NVIDIA's Tegra architectures, right? So
Sure.
anything that NVIDIA Tegra had been able to talk about before, there's no reason why the Nintendo Switch shouldn't be able to do that. So this is interesting. The Eurogamer story is talking about the Nintendo Switch using the Tegra X1 processor, which is the exact same SoC that's in the NVIDIA Shield TV, and whatever their most recent tablet was, I believe. Whereas originally when this first launched and we knew it was Tegra, but we didn't know what it was, I was under the assumption this was going to be the next generation of Tegra SoC, and that apparently is not the case. So it would still be based on Maxwell architecture, but it'd actually be running at, again, according to these rumors, a lower clocked speed than the Shield TV itself, even when docked. The GPU would run at 768 megahertz on its 256 CUDA cores when docked. But when it's undocked, it would actually apparently drop to 307 megahertz, which is a significant delta. The math works out to 780 gigaflops when docked and 315 gigaflops when in mobile mode. And for a system that claims to be able to provide the exact same experience connected to your TV as it does when you're on the go, that brings in interesting questions about what types of things have to change for that. Is it just simply it's going to run at 60 frames per second when you're connected to a TV, but 30 frames per second when you're on the go? And is that enough to make up for the difference in performance that these clock speeds would warrant? Is there maybe some memory in there, some additional cache integration or something like that allows them to make up for a little bit of that? It would seem kind of unlikely. So I mean, but it is interesting if you look at comparatively,
right?
It's when it's docked, you're at 785 gigaflops, but the PlayStation 4 runs at 1.8 teraflops, so more than a teraflop, more than 1,000 gigaflops more than what the Nintendo Switch. Now, Nintendo has never been concerned about matching the performance of the current generations of consoles.
Sure.
And this tends to, back that up, I guess.
Perhaps it's a profoundly low resolution portable screen.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's, if you want to dive into more complications, they're using FP16 numbers, which is just a lower resolution mathematics, which is probably pretty typical for like mobile devices, and in general is probably fine for gaming as well. It's just a matter of how much work your developers have to go through to switch between FP32, otherwise known as single precision, and FP16, floating point 16, which is now kind of generally referred to as half precision. It'd be interesting to see, right? And Scott writes in the story, if Nintendo, wants to hit 1080p at docked and 720p on the mobile screen, right? Depending on whatever the resolution of that screen happens to be, there's another way it can make up for the clock speed variance that we see there. But I don't know. I'm a little bit hesitant now to be excited about what it can offer performance-wise because of the clock speeds, and now that we know that it's a Maxwell-based chip rather than something new. It could still be good. I mean, the Shield tablet and the Shield TV and all that stuff provided good mobile gaming experiences. It was just they had a limited selection of titles. Nintendo should alleviate that concern at the very least. And considering it's launching in March, we don't have a whole lot of time. We should be figuring this stuff out sooner than later.
Well, they should be.
Yeah. Hopefully they have.
It would be awkward if they hadn't, or it will be awkward if they hadn't. Oh man. The other thing I thought was interesting today, for a dearthy news week, there seems to be a lot of news. Yesterday, Nokia announced it had filed, quote, several complaints against Apple in Germany and the United States, claiming Cupertino was infringing on Nokia patents. Apple, of course, fires back. With its cell phone business dying, Nokia began to seek out willing conspirators to commence its illegal patent transfer scheme in full force. Its scheme has continued in full effect to the present. The driving force behind Nokia's strategy was to diffuse its patent portfolio and place it in the hands of PAEs. Acacia and Conversant were its chief conspirators. I guess this morning, Nokia filed more patent lawsuits in Asia, Europe, and the United States, something like 40 patent suits in 11 countries, according to Mac Rumors. Now Apple is suing Nokia, Nokia Corporation, Nokia Solutions, Networks, OI, Nokia Technologies, OI, and claiming that that they are not liable to this. And this is interesting, given that the Samsung Nokia battle just wrapped up recently. It's like 32 patents, display, UI, software, antenna, chipsets. I think it'll be interesting to see how patent trolly this is and what it actually ends up involving in terms of whether or not Apple has to pony up to pay the functionally non-existent cell phone manufacturer Nokia. That was a little cruel, but I think fundamentally accurate. Man, last minute gift ideas. I've noticed recently Best Buy prices are much more competitive than they were a couple of years ago.
That's good.
Well, I was thinking that we were doing our last minute geek gifts guide on Tech Thing this week. External drives are always a big plus. Thumb drives, micro SD cards if you need stocking stuffers. USB cables are always dying. Any sort of last minute gift ideas that are striking you for people that are running around between now and Saturday night?
It's hard. Like we posted a guide last week and tried to do some of that. A handful of components, processors. Alan has some SSD recommendations in the story there as well. Things like battery backups are a good kind of PC gift that will benefit people for years to come in the event of outages and that type of stuff, and keeping you from losing your data. Things like hard drive docks that allow you to do disk-to-disk copies without hooking up to a PC are good ideas for people who are constantly working on their own machines or other machines. I had a security system in there, a stupid expensive camera, but then you can get 256 gig SD cards for $90 now that are fast enough for 4K Ultra HD, 100 megabit recording on stuff like that Sony camera. Those are nice. And then my most popular pick was probably the $16 infrared thermometer, which has numerous uses, both in the computer field and then just in home maintenance and checking your heating and cooling.
I own 3 of those, not of that particular brand, but there's not a lot of thermal difference between my $25 one and my $75 or $125 one. Yeah. And it's amazing. You can get them super cheap. I assume that one came off of Amazon, or?
Yeah. It was like $16. It's the same one I have here, except mine was orange instead of green. They just, whatever the sourcing manufacturer has changed, but it works great. We use it to troubleshoot computers here and whether or not things are running hotter, and then you can use it to troubleshoot your HVAC or find drafty windows or any other interesting amounts of things. And like I said,
see
for
if your catalytic converter is actually working.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. It's like for $16, you should probably just have it, right? It just makes sense.
Well, once you start using it, you find more and more reasons to use it. And then the kids love to run around the house taking temperatures of things and then not putting it back, which is how I ended up with 3 or 4 of them.
I can see that. Yes.
Oh, man. Are you currently wearing your smartwatch?
I am wearing an Apple Watch. Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
It's I thought it was interesting. The Verge had an article up that early next year, Google's going to launch 2 flagship smartwatches with Android Wear 2.0. They'll be the first ones with Android Wear 2.0, which sounds about par for the course, given what we saw with the Pixel phones earlier this year. No Google or Pixel branding, but quote, says The Verge, will be branded by the company that is manufacturing them. Yeah, Wear 2.0 next year is going to show up on the Moto 360 Gen 2, the 360 Sports, LG Watch Urbane, Urbane, not Urbane, second edition LTE. I got to stop making that witty and Urbane joke. LG Watch Urbane, LG G Watch R, Polar M600, Casio Smart Outdoor Watch. Nixon's Missions, Tag Heuer connected, watches from Fossil, Michael Kors, Huawei, and the Asus Zen Watch 2 and 3. I bring that up in part because certainly Apple Watch sales have been off, but it's pretty brutal. The TechCrunch had a pretty good article. Quote, the U.S. wearable market is doing much worse than expected. And they are, eMarketer, they are cutting their sales estimates 20 to 25% from 2015, 25% growth from 2015 to 2016, down from 60%, because most people don't bother to wear them, and most people don't actually have a use for them. It's a product that everybody seems to want until they have it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I use mine a lot, but mainly as a notifications device, right? I don't really use it for, motion tracking or, activity tracking necessarily. I don't check my heart rate on it. I don't go swimming with it. But I will say that I believe it saves on the battery life of my phone, because I can glance at my watch, see if it's a notification of an email or text message that I feel like I need to reply to. And if I can't reply to it from my watch, which is basically just one of the presets, replies work, or can I use an emoji to reply very quickly? Because I'm not usually in a place where I want to just verbally outburst whatever my reply is to a text message. So then I would have to pull out the phone and do it that way. But I see the benefits of it. I don't know. I think they're still pretty expensive, Apple Watches in particular, and they just don't look like what a lot of people want. If that makes any sense. Like the styling on them is still off. Once it's just kind of like you buy a watch and it has some kind of smart capability on it, then it's probably a universal purchase. But people don't want to give up the fashion of the jewelry part of it right away, would be my guess. And there are a lot of people that just don't want to wear watches, period.
Which would be me, because whenever I wear a watch and I type for a living, I end up with what I will affectionately think of as some unfortunate wrist pain. Man, the Pebble owners, I think we talked about this already, but wanted to revisit it. If you own a Pebble and you love a Pebble, you're doomed. I've had several Pebble owners ask me, Boy Genius Report, pulling no punches with Pebble as Kickstarter's worst failure. Although anybody who has paid for a Kickstarter and never got a product would probably consider their Kickstarter fail considerably worse. Although in this case, a lot of Pebble Kickstarter subscribers got kind of whacked. So Pebble was bought by Fitbit. Fitbit basically is buying the tech, some of the engineers, and are dumping essentially the Pebble. And a couple things that come up. One, the larger ecosystem for the Pebble is probably effectively dead. A friend of mine who works in a division of Fitbit, they did a hackathon. And they basically had like cases of Pebbles. They're like, if anybody wants to hack these as part of the hackathon, just grab a few. But if you own a Pebble, you're not going to get software updates. You're not going to get replacement chargers. You're not going to get warranty service. Pebbles are just going to sort of become less and less compatible with phones in the nearer or later future. They are reissuing, or they are issuing refunds if you ordered the Pebble 2 or the Pebble Core, which is nice, right? Again, if you've ever had a Kickstarter where you sent money and you never got a thing, getting your money back probably sounds like a pretty nice idea. It's just really frustrating. the company's in debt. They ran a Kickstarter. They took a bunch of people's money, and then they turned around and sold the thing out to a competitor, and basically left their users, SOL, to use a highly technical term. And I've had a bunch of people ask me like, oh, what's my alternative? And the reality is there is nothing quite like the Pebble out there. It has extraordinary battery life. It's very, very simple. And the vast majority of the smartwatches out there, they're all trying to like pack more and more smartphone features into something that straps to your wrist, and not doing a particularly good job of that. And of course, if battery life was an attraction for you on the Pebble, and I think it was for almost every Pebble user, pretty much every other smartphone you can buy these days is just abysmal in comparison. It's a little frustrating for Pebble owners.
Agreed.
So
I was one. I mean, I was wearing a Pebble up until I bought the second gen Apple Watch. So
yeah, Robert Hare is a big fan of them too.
Yeah.
Uber got into hot water. Attorney General for state of California got profoundly upset, along with the city of San Francisco. Uber was not playing by the rules in the state of California for testing autonomous vehicles, although they claim it was like a assisted driving vehicle and not autonomous, and that the one that was caught running a red light, the Uber vehicle caught running a red light, that was a driver error, not a AI or software error. So they call it like the self-driving vehicle, not autonomous vehicle. DMV basically ended up revoking. There's a permitting process, and like 20 companies that participated in that in the state of California. Uber refused, and then basically said they weren't going to comply. So the DMV revoked the vehicle registrations, and now the vehicles, I guess, are on their way to Arizona to be tested there. It was frustrating because if you've ever thought of Uber as being a company that doesn't feel any profound need to listen, there were issues with how they dealt with bicycle lanes before they started testing. They didn't resolve those. There's the red light, which we'll give Uber credit and say that was a driver error and not a self-driving vehicle software error. Yeah, they didn't want to play by the rules here in the state of California, and the hammer got brought down. Pittsburgh is still testing them, but of course that's where Uber's advanced technology group is based, so that kind of makes sense. I'll be really curious to see how this evolves. I mean, the other kind of crazy news that came out, Apple has apparently given up on developing a smart car. Or car, that's the rumor. Honda and Google's apparently pretty much spun down, or Alphabet, I should say, has pretty much spun down their autonomous vehicle efforts. Everybody thought, but a press release came out yesterday that Honda R&D Co., the R&D subsidiary of Honda Motors Co., announced today that it is entering into formal discussions with Waymo, an independent company of Alphabet Incorporated, to integrate its self-driving technology with Honda vehicles. This technical collaboration between Honda researchers and Waymo's self-driving technology team would allow both companies to learn about the integration of Waymo's fully self-driving sensors, software, and computing platforms into Honda vehicles. Which basically says we're Honda, we're a conservative engineering-based company, and we are going to try this out, but we want everybody to be aware of it, so that if you are a loyal Honda customer that is desperate for an autonomous vehicle, we will dangle that carrot in front of you that we are working with Google. But it's been interesting watching the autonomous vehicles or the march towards autonomous vehicles get pretty hot and heavy. It's certainly something that's going to be a big deal at CES this year. Fiat Chrysler has kind of the first keynote of CES. I'm going to brazenly assume it's not for some sort of unbelievably cool head unit, in a Chrysler minivan. Then it's going to have something to do with AI. I don't know. It's.
I love the title of this release in its vagueness. These two companies have entered into discussions on collaborating.
Technical collaboration.
Yeah,
technical collaboration.
They've entered into discussions about how they might discuss implementing these technologies. I mean, whatever. That's pessimistic on my part to word it like that. But I mean, I want to see more of these things happen. The more of these companies are talking and working together, as opposed to, I'm a believer in that this is an important enough thing, and safety is important enough that we should encourage collaboration above competitiveness, right? Like rather than everybody working on their own, let's share as much of this data as we can so that it is a safe implementation, as opposed to some company being further behind and not wanting to, lose market share or lose mind share and release a product before it's ready because they feel like they have to. And then obviously, you run into the issue of that causing, safety concerns for the consumer. But then obviously, if there are safety concerns for the consumer, that company needs to be put out of business for releasing products that, endangered people. And so like to see Alphabet / Google or whatever kind of be a center for this, I feel like they would be the one that's willing to share their information the most, right? Tesla has been very confined, very siloed in their own little thing. They don't really have a lot of outside relationships with other companies, as far as I'm aware, at least, in terms of sharing that kind of data or licensing it, or kind of even working on some kind of open standards thing for this. Because I imagine it won't be long before, the transportation department in the United States suddenly says, we need to have a meeting on this. Like we need to figure
we need to talk.
We need to talk about this, right? You know how we have those crash tests? Now they're gonna implement these self-driving tests, and then how is that gonna work? What's the timeline for that? The more people that are involved, the better, I think.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Man, somebody just tweeted at me that GameStop, apparently, if you go into GameStop stores, you may be able to track down a NEC Classic Edition. Polygon did an article on that. So if you are that desperate, but you don't want to pay a staggering overage charge for...
right. Yeah, it's out of stock everywhere on... there you go. No green. Except eBay,
nowinstock.net is what you're seeing on your screen if you're watching the video. It is a fantastic place, by the way, to find Lego.
Oh, really? Okay. Right.
Those tough to track down Lego kits. Although the vast majority of them seem to have been extremely sold out, including the much desired heavy haul train. If you haven't seen that, don't mock the heavy haul train, man.
A lot of stuff.
Sorry, I have small children, so Legos are deeply fascinating right now. But yeah, nowinstock.net is an excellent place. We tell you about it a lot just because it's an incredibly useful resource. But I was talking about the Gigafactory. Somebody shot drone footage of how big it has gotten.
I'm looking at it now, and the part that when they first showed it, I thought it was big already, but it looks like
that's 3 of the 21 Gigafactory blocks. I know the part of Nevada pretty well where this is, northern Nevada, kind of all of northern Nevada looks like this. Big, or large parts of northern Nevada where it's just kind of big grassy land that's been used to graze cattle mostly. At full capacity, writes TechCrunch, the Gigafactory should have the ability to produce more lithium-ion batteries per year than were made by all companies combined during 2013, according to Tesla, and it should reach that output capability sometime in 2018. So that's TechCrunch says that's about 30% of the size of the factory, or the size of what the size of the factory will be when it's completed. So, I mean, it's it's not too far from Reno. It's a fairly empty part of a fairly open rangeland filled state. But that's going to be unbelievably huge when it's done.
That's impressive.
I'm looking forward to reductions in the cost of lithium-ion batteries everywhere. And the other thing is, if you go to Tesla.com/energy, that's kind of the primary place to get a look at the Tesla batteries, the Powerwall batteries. And I'd be really curious to see if the Powerwall prices start dropping down. they're pretty cool. But like a 14 kilowatt hour Powerwall battery is 5,500. And because of when you go to additional Powerwalls for additional battery storage, you get the price drops down to like 2 for 11,000. So they're about $5,500 a piece. Maybe it's not a price drop like I thought it was. Maybe I just can't do math. But you could get it's just a really nice way to store electrical energy if you have a solar system, which is something I would very much like to add to my house in the not too distant future. Just need to start selling plasma or something, or wait till the Gigafactory to come online and watch the prices on the Powerwall drop. That's a Powerwall 2 we were looking at right there.
Yeah.
Oh man, what are you looking forward to at CES?
Oh man, I don't know. Right. I think what we'll see is in terms of PC components, we're going to see Z270 motherboards out the wazoo. We're going to see AM4 motherboards that are built for Ryzen processors. So that'll be interesting. Although it will still just be motherboards that just have new features on them that will be ready for a new processor. I don't expect we'll see much in terms of like Zen products or performance, or Vega products or performance. NVIDIA does have a press conference, so there's a chance they might be announcing something new there. It might be developer focused instead of consumer focused, but it could be a chance for them to do a surprise like 1080 Ti launch or something to that effect. Other than that, I don't really know. Like what I want to see is drastically better displays. Let me see some HDR, variable refresh, 200 hertz 4K displays, or something along those lines, right? That will start to kind of trickle down into price points that I can afford and that most people can afford. And not just in TVs, I want to see monitors that are 30 inches or less that fit on a desktop, those types of things. That's what I would like to see at CES if I were to make a humble request, I guess.
Humble request.
What are you looking forward to?
I'm not expecting any VR, really affordable VR stuff that's worth buying at this point. Had an interesting talk with Will Smith from FooVR about that, who kind of dashed my hopes for cheap VR headsets. Although at least the hardware, the system barrier to entry has dropped. I think we're pretty set for GPUs. We're still waiting for word on the Zen. I'm really curious to see what happens with dynamic HDR, which is going to come out with HDMI 2.1, which has led Robert Heron to exclaim he would just prefer DisplayPort on everything at this point. And kind of curious, as always, I'm going to be looking at some speakers and some headphones. And, I was laughing because I was trying to figure out how my CES calendar, I'll pull it up really quickly, but I'm really curious to see what comes out television-wise from Samsung and LG. How they're going to top last year. I'm curious to see what that Fiat Chrysler announcement is. Not that I'm a particularly in the model. I'm not searching for a new car, but I think it's an interesting sort of evolution for CES to have sort of the first slot on the first media day be a car company again. Qualcomm, what are the new processors going to be? What are they going to be pushing? Do we have any more solid information on 5G? I'm also curious to see what the less expensive television companies come out with, TCL and Hisense, in terms of how they're going to continue to compete at the low end against Samsung and LG. And cheap Android phones. I'm really curious what the sort of the low end and mid range Android phones are going to be looking like. Because Honor's got the second slot on the first press day. The ZTE's got a prime slot right after Intel on Wednesday. There's a lot going on. So,
yeah.
We wait with bated breath. And who knows, maybe this will be one of those CESs where something none of us expected turns out to be the biggest, coolest, most amazing, super important thing we hadn't anticipated going into.
I'd like to see that.
That would be cool. We haven't had one of those sort of like revolutionary CES episodes in a while. So that would be exciting.
Yeah.
We will be recording at CES on Thursday, which is the first day the show floor is open. That's after the 2 press days. So if you have a question about hardware, or if you're curious about something at CES, do us a favor, tweets at Ryan Shrout or at Patrick Norton, and we will aim to track it down for you and see what we can find out about that. So we're going to be recording Thursday afternoon, Thursday, January 5th from CES. So that should be fun. And of course, there'll be lots of mechanical keyboards and PC cases.
RGB lights. Yeah, there'll be a lot of that.
There'll be a lot of that. Without a doubt. Yeah. Lots of meetings, lots of exciting, fun meetings. We wait, ladies and gentlemen, with bated breath. And with that, I believe Ryan Shrout's going to go out for some last-minute holiday shopping, or perhaps Christmas wrapping.
I have to do that too, yes.
Oh, yeah. I know who's going to be up setting up toys at 2 a.m. Ryan is, and I am, because parenting. Although I think I want to try to get on Steam on Christmas Eve after everybody else in the house is asleep. I'll tweet about that if I manage to actually finish wrapping presents before passing out in the middle of the living room. But do us a favor, tweet at Patrick Norton or at Ryan Shrout if you have CES questions. And as always, PCPer.com is a place to find more of Mr. Ryan Shrout. You can find me at techthing.com or avxl.com. And we look forward to seeing you in the new year from CES 2017. With that, I'm Patrick Norton.
Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next year.